Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first Moving Forward webinar of 2021. My name is JJ McMurtry, and I'm the Dean of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies at York University, and thank you all for joining us. A special welcome to our guest panelists who you'll meet soon, and thank you also to our host, Sean Kheraj. You'll be hearing from them all shortly. So I'd now like to turn to acknowledge the land that we are all on. This meeting is virtual, and because of that, we're not all actually gathered in the same space. And therefore, York's land acknowledgement may not represent the territory that you are currently on. And I would ask you, if this is the case, that you take the responsibility to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are on and its current treaty holders. For those of you that are attending from Canada, if you don't know the traditional treaty holders of the land that you currently occupy, who they are, you can text 1-907-312-5085 with your town and province to find out. I myself am situated in the area known as Takaranto and gratefully acknowledge that I live on this territory, which is shared by York University. As a member of the York University community, I recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and this territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Welcome again to our guests and to everybody joining us on Zoom to the next chapter of Moving Forward. During this panel, we will hear from 5 successful York graduates who will talk about their entrepreneurship journey. And if at any time you need help with this experience or have questions for the panelists about the content, feel free to click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen, and our team here from LA&PS is ready to help you. So that's all from me. I'd like to turn things over to Associate Dean Sean Kheraj, who will now introduce our guests. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, JJ, and welcome everybody to our panel featuring some alumni from LA&PS programs, our panel called How Entrepreneurs Overcome Adversity. I'm going to introduce our panelists one by one, let them say a few words about themselves, and then we'll roll into some questions for discussion. So our first guest is Anil Taneja, who completed our program in commerce and is the managing director at Palm Holdings. Are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Sean. Again, my name is Anil Taneja from Palm Holdings. We own, operate, and build hotels across Canada, throughout the US and the United Kingdom through our franchise model. So we own and operate hotels under the names of Marriott, Hilton, Westin, Starwood, Holiday Inns, and all of that sort. And looking forward to getting to know everyone here.
Thanks so much for joining us today. The second panelist is Matt Golden, who completed a degree in economics in LA&PS. Hey, Matt.
Hi there, Sean. Thanks for having me today. Matt Golden, founder and managing partner of Golden Ventures. We're an early stage venture fund investing across North America, currently investing out of our third fund. And it was started in 2011. We invest in early stage technology companies, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Our third guest is Noora Sharrab, who completed a bachelor's and master's degree in political science and is now the co-founder and CEO at Sitti Social Enterprise. Hey, Noora.
Hi, my name is Noora Sharrab. I'm co-founder and CEO of Sitti. As Sean mentioned, I completed my BA in 2007 and my MA shortly in political science with a specialization in refugee and forced migration. I also founded a not-for-profit called Hopes for Women in Education, also focused on refugees, kind of really bringing me together in the refugee community. So Nice
Thanks
to
for
be here.
being here. Yes. Our fourth panelist is Richard Reiner, who's completed a PhD in philosophy and is the founding partner at CC Stratus Capital. Hey, Richard.
Hey, thank you, Sean. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Yes, hi, I'm Richard. I've spent the last 25 years, more or less, building and selling a series of cybersecurity companies, primarily. The first one is today part of Trend Micro out of Taiwan. The second one is part of Dell. We sold one to Intel, a few others along the way. These days, I'm chairman of another cybersecurity company called Cybeats, also of a blockchain platform company called Diffuse. I do a few other random things as well, but won't get into all that. And it's great to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
And he still has time to do these events as well, which is we really, really appreciate. Our last panelist is Sharon Zohar, who completed a bachelor's degree in English in our program in LA&PS and is the CEO and founder of The Big Push. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, great. So great to be here. Thanks so much. So my name's Sharon and the founder CEO of The Big Push, as you mentioned. We're a business accelerator for women entrepreneurs. So our focus is really focusing on early stage women companies and help them through capacity building through our professional network of experts and supporting them through funding. So Matt and I have sort of a crossover of interests.
So Sharon, maybe I can stay with you here for the first question to get the ball rolling on some discussion. I've met with several alumni who are entrepreneurs, and almost all of them have used the term the entrepreneurial bug when they talk about why they got into entrepreneurship, what led them into it. Could you tell us a little bit about what that means, at least to you? Like, what is the entrepreneurial bug? How do you know if you've got it? What should you do if you have it?
Well, when you have it, you definitely know you have it. What it is, essentially, it's an itch, just like an addiction, essentially. And it's the desire really to build something that no one else has. It's this curiosity, it's this drive to do something out of the norm, really, and to create basically a future that you want. So that's actually for me. I mean, I had the entrepreneurial bug very early on, and then it really kind of, inflamed itself when I got out of university, very much so, and it really focused on me thinking outside of the box on things and really had a different traditional mindset. So, I think that's primarily the bug is something that kind of eats away at you. You think about it, you dream about it. If you have an idea, you scribble it, you study it, you flip it over different which ways, and then you bring in people and help you champion it. So I think that's kind of the mindset that goes along with it.
Anil, did you have a similar experience?
For me, Sean, it's the solution to anxiety, depression, overambition, and all the moments in between. It's the space in between your heartbeats is kind of how we look at it at our office. We believe every single person has it. Every single person on this call, every single person in our company has the entrepreneurial bug. It's just how do you channel it? If anyone tells you don't have it, they're wrong. How do you know if you have it? And that's a real challenge. But think of it as the Post-it notes. The Post-it note was created because someone had to bookmark his hymns. And now every single person here has used a Post-it note more than once. So really, you have it when you see an opportunity in your day-to-day activities and any single thing you're doing. You're seeing an opportunity that somebody's missed, or you found a solution to make your life easier. So we've all been in that situation. The entrepreneurial bug is the difference between finding that solution and doing something about it, in our opinion.
Matt, what do you think? What was the experience like for you and for maybe some of the founders that you work with in terms of investing?
Yeah, I mean, the entrepreneurial bug is exactly that. It's this thing you can't get out of your mind. It becomes sort of a driving force. And when we, invest in early stage founders, I mean, you can really tell someone who genuinely is passionate about solving a problem, and they literally can't sleep, eat, or do anything else because they have to solve this problem. And it's very, to build a company is like it's a real commitment. It's a minimum 10-year commitment, and as Richard would know and others, and so you really have to be driven to solve a problem. And so that's how we think about it. And we look for that drive, that tenacity, and that passion.
Now, Noora, you've been involved in founding new enterprises. Did you come at it from a kind of problem-based approach, that you were identifying a problem and seeking a solution that you could kind of do through entrepreneurship?
That was exactly that. I saw a problem and I was thinking, why didn't anybody do something about this? Or why isn't this being resolved in the community level? And, and I'm a big believer that, every single person has a chance to create a difference. And we often underestimate ourselves, or some people often underestimate themselves. And for me, it was an opportunity to really start something for vulnerable communities that otherwise were told that they can't. So that kind of was my drive. Yeah.
And then Richard, in your experience, in starting up multiple enterprises, have you seen, in terms of like how people respond to the itch, change over time? Have there been differences in the responses?
I'm not sure if there's been that much change in the way people approach entrepreneurship. I think, one aspect of it seems, that's kind of continuous across my whole experience from when I started my first company, 25 years ago to today. One thing that entrepreneurs have is a certain comfort level making decisions in conditions of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And that's very different from being a gambler. A gambler is someone who, ideally a good gambler knows the odds and plays the odds. That's different from uncertainty, where you don't know the odds. You just have a sense of conviction that something is the right thing to do. It might be difficult to trace where it comes from. Maybe that's why people call it a bug. It's almost like a disability. It's an inability not to act on that sense that there's something that provides an opportunity that other people haven't acted on. Someone's got to do it. It better be me, because no one else is going to otherwise. Something like that.
So, it's almost like a strategic decision, playing chess on a board where you don't know where all the pieces are, but you know where some of the pieces are.
Something like that. or blindfolded chess or something like that. Yeah.
So, this gets me thinking about how you go about making those decisions. How do you make that leap? What kinds of skills do you need? And for the context of what we're here today as a group of alumni from York, are there skills that you acquired in your education that you think were relevant to the work that you would later do in your entrepreneurial enterprises? What skills did you use most, and which ones did you wish you had acquired in your education? And maybe we can start with Matt on this one, in terms of skills acquisition.
Yeah, you have to be sort of a jack of all trades as an entrepreneur. You're starting a company with literally no support. And so we look at people who have a genuine resourcefulness. We look at the ability to problem solve and the velocity of learning. So no one starts out understanding all of the core components required to be successful at building an entire, enterprise. And so really what you're looking at is, how resourceful is this person? How quickly do they learn? How coachable is this person? Because the best thing you can do is go and find people who have done it in the way that you would hope to one day, that you aspire to. Surround yourself with these great people. And that's what I mean by both resourcefulness. That's about getting people around you, which is a lead indicator of your future ability to attract the kind of people and talent that you're going to need in order to really be successful at building an enterprise, as well as your rate of learning. How quickly do you actually learn these concepts and apply them and execute them? So hopefully that gives you a sense of some of the skills that we've seen from a pattern matching perspective of our most successful entrepreneurs in our portfolio.
And so Sharon, from your perspective, you came out of an English program in your bachelor's education. Were there skills from that program that were transferable to your future career, or were there things that you ended up having to acquire later?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And with an English degree, the obvious thing that really came out that really supported my entrepreneurial journey was communications, really. Both my verbal and oral communication, the idea really of being able to, as Matt said, bring people along with you. You have to actually articulate that vision. when you get people excited about that and be able to actually translate that vision in a way that people are drawn to, then that's the way you can build networks, relationships, bring in co-founders, and really bring your team in so you can actually build towards that. So that was largely, the English degree really provided me that opportunity to see not only language, but storytelling. And storytelling, what does that look like, and being able to translate that vision. So that's really a fundamental piece that helped out in my journey. And alongside that came all the types of prioritizing and problem solving that comes with just being a university student and managing those things and figuring out what those priorities were. But one of the things that I would say that I was missing, I was obviously in English and very heavily in the liberal arts, the aspects of sort of the other side of the business, the financial sides. I was roughly kind of familiarizing myself with budgets and those kinds of things, but I really didn't throw myself in as much as I should. I learned on the job very quickly, but I think it would have been a good skill to have been more immersed in, how to open a bank account, so, how to create a loan, how to, the basic things that university students may or may not know would be something I would say is very valuable to just have those, pillars in your skill tool, as it were.
Now, Anil, you completed a commerce program. So there may be skills or elements of that program that might be self-evident, I guess, in terms of starting up a business. Did you feel like you were equipped to head into an entrepreneurial enterprise, or were there other things in terms of what you had to learn to get you to where you are now?
No, not at all. I still don't think I'm equipped to head up an entrepreneurial enterprise. I'm still learning on the job. But what I did get from it, and I agree with everyone saying with resourceful at problem solving, that's huge, is the ability to navigate a challenge. But more than that, the most important thing that I got is the ability to absorb information. Because in university, we're absorbing in abundance, we're absorbing with speed, and we're absorbing a lot of diversity. And that hasn't changed. I just learned how to do that in university. And as a result of that, I came out of university, and university is, something you're there to learn, you're there to tick some boxes, and then you're going out to the real world to get a job. But the one thing that changed for me leaving university and for my program is it gave me a passion for learning, which I didn't have before. So that passion to learn, to discover, and to continue to find things that I'm interested in has never ended. I'm still learning. I'm still refreshing all, course content, still going to speaking series, and trying to gather more information and my question at the end of all the information is, how can I commoditize it, right? Because I need to turn it into a profit. If I could do anything better, if I could look back and say, what could I have done, is I think I underestimated in university the power of a network. And sure, there's a lot of great education that comes there, but I definitely underestimated the potential of all the people in the room every time I was there. And that's something that I don't ever underestimate today. A lot of amazing people are coming out of the programs. You go into one of those classes, look left, look right. One of them could be the CEO of the next billion-dollar company, even though they're failing in that class. So it's really special what that community, that university can bring together. And I don't think we quite realize that when we're in the day-to-day.
Yeah, the connections that you are making, as well as the connections that you could be making as a student. Noora, did you have a similar experience in political science in terms of acquiring knowledge and opportunities for connections with others?
I think when I was looking at this, I was thinking of my professors, and the number one thing that stood out was question everything and dig a little deeper all the time. And things are never as they seem, and obviously with political science, everything is political. So that to me struck out and kept popping up at me throughout my journey is never take things as they are and never take no for an answer, and always dig a little deeper. And you find that you kind of unravel and deconstruct along the way. That was kind of my lesson coming out of it. I would share similar sentiments with Sharon of saying, like, I wish my financials were a little better in terms of like managing my numbers when it comes to launching a company, and definitely not something that I had in my pathway of thinking, okay, I'm going to start a company or I'm going to do this. It was definitely a different path, right? You always go in thinking, all right, I have a preset plan. I'm going to take this. I'm going to get a job in this. I'm going to do that. And although that kind of was my mindset, you find that life will take you in a certain way, that it pulls you right or left and in that direction that ends up being, something completely different than what you had planned. And that was kind of the journey for me. I never planned to open up a company, or it was more, I'm going to get into international development and I'm going to kind of work on that. And sometimes we plan, but we don't realize kind of how the journey takes us in that.
And maybe that's a piece of the uncertainty too, in terms of possibilities and opportunities that you might be able to leap on, but you don't know 100% how that might turn out. Now, viewers may be interested to know how a PhD in philosophy ended up working in cybersecurity, startups, and investment. So Richard, take us there. Are there skills as a philosopher that you use as an entrepreneur, or was this is a completely divergent path for you?
So, I mean, I have an official answer to that, which I'm going to skip and give you the real answer.
Okay.
I mean, I do think there is a connection there. I think there are a couple of things. One thing that's always been very valuable to me is the ability, to question the status quo, to question the received wisdom on something. In fact, I have an inability not to do that, which personally, I think it's my best quality, but many of the people close to me would say it's my most irritating quality. I mean, I can be a giant pain in the ass about that, if I can say that word. And that certainly comes from the kind of discipline that you learn in a philosophy program. And I did a particular kind of analytic philosophy, which is very much about clarity and about getting to the bottom of things. It's not the poetic kind of philosophy, it's the more mathematical kind. I found that discipline is extremely useful to me. Today, if I find myself having to go into a new area, or consider the adjacency of what I'm doing to something else, I think one of the advantages I have is that I have a systematic way of thinking about these things, and I call BS on myself if I don't feel I have enough clarity on something. In a way, I'm very demanding with respect to, am I really understanding this space sufficiently? And that absolutely comes from that kind of educational background. Absolutely does.
This is one of the most interesting things I think about this panel, is how diverse your educations are from one to another, and the different ways in which each of you found your way towards entrepreneurship. And maybe it is getting that bug, but also leveraging skills and modes of thinking that you get out of different disciplinary perspectives: commerce, philosophy, political science, English. Now, I wanted to get to some discussion about risk, and you've already talked about the unknown and working with uncertainty. And I'm not sure where to start here, but I wondered if anybody could share a story about risk-taking and what you learned from taking risks, big or small. And I don't know if anybody's kind of got a story in mind that they might want to share.
I gotta go.
You want to start us off, Richard?
So, you got to zoom back to the relatively early days of the cybersecurity industry. I was running a company that was growing pretty quickly by that point, and we thought we had found a big opportunity. The hackers of the world were changing their tactics. They were not focusing on attacking the operating systems anymore. It was all about the applications that ran on top of them, and we had an idea for a product we could build. Web application firewall is what it's called today, if anyone cares. And that's become a multi-billion-dollar segment. We had a couple of $1 million saved up from the accumulated profits over the last number of years, and we bet it all. We built the world's first web application firewall. Now, we didn't do it stupidly. We didn't just close our eyes and hope. We went out and talked to potential customers first. We did what Steve Blank in his excellent book on entrepreneurship, and Eric Ries in the Lean Startup, what they talk about doing, which is get out of the building, talk to your customers, see if they really want this thing. And we did. We went to the chief security officers of the biggest banks in Canada. They were customers. We trusted them to be honest with us. We got referrals from them. We talked to dozens of people, and they all said, yeah, that is where the problem is today. That is an unsolved thing. If you build that, we need that. And so we bet everything on it. And then nobody bought it. I think we sold 2 licenses. It was like pushing string. And I think I know what went wrong. I mean, with hindsight, it's easy to see. We asked the wrong question. We asked them, do you want one of these? We didn't say, do you want it this year? We didn't say, do you have budget for it? We didn't say, is this one of your top 3 problems that you're willing to commit resources to? If we had, we would have heard, well, 2 or 3 years from now, we'll probably be able to put some budget aside to experiment with this. And that would have taught us it was a bad idea to build that now. That product eventually, we had to abandon it because the company would have died if we kept trying to push a thing you can't sell. We pivoted and did something else. A few years later, some other companies came along. They were the new hotness. They invented the web application firewall years after we did. And at least one of them became $1 billion business on the back of that product. And it was a question of not being too early in the market, which can be a near-death experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a little bit outside of my risk zone, I think. Anybody else got a story of risk that they want to share with the audience? Matt?
I'll share one. I mean, I think entrepreneurship is riddled with risk. They're synonymous. I mean, it's hard not to imagine, being a founder and not taking risk, because you're typically leaving, some other path, some other sort of safer path. And, I'll use an example sort of similar to Richard, which was, I was a lawyer at a top law firm who sort of caught that entrepreneur bug myself and jumped out and left law at the end of 99 or early 2000, just as the market tanked coming off of the internet bubble. My mother was a mess. I mean, she couldn't believe I had done this. How could you leave law to go work on mobile gaming, of all things, in 2000, which, by the way, back then was like, they didn't even have flip phones yet. These were black and white. The first phones you could download a game onto, and we did these amazing things like building the first multiplayer mobile game in North America and playing, chess against each other in the US and Canada. I mean, incredible. But similar to Richard, we were very early on the curve. And we did build a sizable business and spend 8 years doing it. But fundamentally, it didn't really work out very well. I mean, it was okay. But I had given up an entire, law career and took, 8 years, and we raised $30 million, and we had offices all, in California, and took this massive risk, and we didn't hit it big. I mean, but that's the point. To me, I would never trade that experience. So we took this massive risk, and by all accounts, financially, we pretty much failed. But I don't feel like we failed, because it gave me my entire foundation for our career, which was, we had a ton of success along the way. So we learned what it was to be successful. And equally, we learned what it's like when things don't work out and how to manage things down. And in Canada in particular, I think people, fear failure. And I think that's a problem. I think you have to embrace failure. When you hear the stories of many of the top founders in the world, top entrepreneurs, they often get it on their third try, not on their first try. And I think Canada needs to do a better job at embracing failure, not being afraid to take huge risks and fail, because you learn so much through those processes.
I'm very encouraged by this. Failure is one of my specialties. Noora, what role has risk played in your career and your development as an entrepreneur?
So it's kind of like a double. I would say there's 2 risks that I've taken. One was I decided to start a company halfway across the world in the middle of a refugee camp, and I had no money, and started out with, okay, I think this could work, and there's a story to be told, and there was something beautiful here to share. And it's almost like this feeling in my gut that like, this is going to work, or this is going to happen. And the second was completely pivoting my career. First, with international development, I had a very good job working for the United Nations in Jordan, and It was taking that decision after a while of like, I can't do both because it's nearly impossible. And this is why a lot of investors will ask you, are you committing full time into your position or into your company or not? I was also, pregnant with my second child. Like I was there's a lot of like family changes. So it was a big dive, right? I mean, I think as women, we also have this greater, I don't want to say the men don't feel it too, but there is this big burden. I had to take a pause for maternity. I had to kind of reevaluate my career steps. And shortly after I relocated, I went back to Canada, landed a corporate job, worked there till I was getting anxiety attacks. And then I was like, this is not the life I want to live. I'm not passionate enough for this. This is not something I wake up wanting to go to work. It was almost like it was creating too much stress. And then I realized, I have a passion to really make this company work. And that's kind of when I took the risk of leaving everything and pivoting and just focusing and saying, this is what I want to do and I'm going to make it work. And so sometimes you just have to similar to what Matt said, walk away from your comfort zone because, it seems like the better option. You're getting a good pay, getting your benefits, but then it just doesn't make you happy or it doesn't drive you. It doesn't like spark that passion in you. And that's what it was for me. Right.
Yeah. Like I've heard similar stories about the moment where you take the leap, where you give up the day job or you give up the stability to head into the uncertainty, but the uncertainty is the thing that's really been drawing you. Sharon, I don't know if you've had similar experiences, if you've got a story of risk that might add something here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unlike what Noora was saying. I mean, I started off as well, out of university, had a path towards, becoming a writer and working in book publishing, of which both I did. And I was down the line 7 years in, and I was doing great. And I loved it. And I got to hang out with Mordechai Richler and all these great, incredible writers. And then I was going further up the promotional line and I got into director levels. And it was really at that moment when I had that promotion, I said to myself, there's something was gnawing at me. It was like, I don't know what, I didn't want to be defined by one thing. I just didn't want to be that one thing. I didn't want to be stuck in one place. And so I literally just took a leap and I pivoted my whole career and I went into technology. It was early 2000s. Matt was just describing sort of the landscape. And I said, I'm going to dive into this early stage startup. I think I was 4th or 5th into as the employee. And so I learned everything I could possibly do. You become everybody, every hat from marketing to PR. I was doing customer service. I was cleaning washrooms, whatever it might be. And I did that for a number of years. And I really kind of watched that company grow and help build that company to a point where it was close to exit. And just before its exit, I had another sort of pivot, and that, to Noora's point, I had a family and I made a conscious decision that I wanted to be recognizing that I had that luxury to do so. It was important to me. And that's where sort of the next pivot came until I came back into that entrepreneurial bug and started working harder. And at the end of the day, it was just about the curiosity that kept on going. I just wanted to build more of myself to add to a future that I wanted to see, both for myself and for my kids.
And Anil, did you have similar moments of taking these leaps?
Sure, I feel like we do it every day. And I don't look at it as sort of risk. I look at it as chasing opportunity that happens to come with a little bit of risk, because I can convince myself so much that everything's a no-brainer. And certainly other people wouldn't see it that way. But look, I'll tell you, I'm in the hotel business. COVID has completely gutted the hotel business. I've got hotels on Disney property when Disney has been closed. I've got hotels in Montreal where there's a quarantine and nobody can leave home after 8 o'clock. So why would you stay in a hotel? And these buildings are worth 20 to 100 million bucks and they're empty with zero occupancy. So we are completely gutted, but we're not going to let a good crisis go to waste at the same time. As much as we are hurt, we're putting everything back on the line again. Wherever we've got any resources, wherever we're able to as a business, wherever we're able to sell things that have maintained value and hold things that have lost value. First, we're covering our losses, and then we're going to invest in our team. And then thirdly, we're going to go shopping and buy some hotels that can't survive through this. So, I mean, I look at a lot of people will say, wow, that's risky. Why would you go into a business that some newspapers are saying are never going to come back. People aren't going to travel again. They're going to be on Zoom. Well, we believe the complete opposite, and we're going to take that risk. But for us, that's kind of a no-brainer. We think people will travel again. We'll think things will normalize. It may be different, but we think that the devaluation in the business is going to be offset with the, call it the roaring 20s after COVID happens again. So we're pretty excited. A lot of people say, wow, that's risky. We think, wow, there's a lot of opportunity there. And we're so excited what the next few years are going to bring.
Right. I mean, that's a really good point. Risk and opportunity operate hand in hand. And, when it works out, it was a risk that was worthwhile. And I guess the skills that you acquire through education and through experience help you build up the capacities to make strategic risks, strategic risks, let's say. We have a lot of questions from the audience, so I'm going to start working through some of the audience questions. There's great questions in here. And there's one that came in from a student who is asking about advice for students who are getting close to finishing an undergraduate education. So in each of your careers, there's been a lot between the completion of your undergrad and where you've ended up now. What sort of advice might you share with a student who's in their graduating year, who is maybe got the entrepreneurial bug, has an interest in starting a business?
I can try to tackle that one. One of the things that I would say is, unless there is actually an idea that's sort of burning inside of you, some of the ways that, again, through my example, is join a large corporation. Feel it out. Understand sort of how the machinations of an actual corporation works. It doesn't have to be a full-blown, Deloitte large corporation if that's where you are driven to, or even some kind of scale-up company. So you can see how things work before you dive in. It really is a good learning platform. I know there are currently a lot of co-ops there, which I think are phenomenal to really get your hands wet into it. But it gives you a better sense of, not only do you have what it takes, but you have that, we talked about that risk taking, which is a really part and parcel of becoming an entrepreneur, and recognizing, and it's okay if you're not, but just testing that theory out and seeing what happens when you're in that environment.
Noora?
Yeah, I would say, try to land yourself an internship in the field that you want to work in, or even in your last year, try to kind of get a feel of the type of workload and the type of offerings that are available. For me, I try to plug myself as much as possible to on-campus type of internships or your student university clubs. Really try to dive in from that aspect, and as well, kind of more focused in the industry that you want to work in. So you may not be able to land a job immediately, but I'm sure you'll be able to find internship opportunities that are that are usually available and are easy to land. And my suggestion is just put yourself out there.
And I guess to that point, we got a question here about connecting with a mentor. Wondering, how do you connect with a mentor, a business mentor, an entrepreneurial mentor? How do you know they're not going to take your idea? So I guess, how do you connect with a mentor you can trust? And did any of you have experiences, reaching out to a mentor or someone else who had some experience that they could share with you?
I would say, I'm happy to jump in. I would say finding your mentor is one of the most important things you can do. And that can come in all shapes and sizes. I think Sharon's advice is really, really smart, which is, if you're not like immediately burning with some passion to solve a problem, go and get experience. And also Noora's advice, which is go get it in a relevant field or something you think you're really passionate about, so you can get in there, learn. And mentors usually sort of present themselves to those who are super resourceful, super charismatic, and really sort of like the ones who are sort of keen and really wanting to learn. Those people will start exposing or becoming apparent, and hopefully will be open to mentoring you. But it's an active thing on your part to go and find them. They don't present themselves unless you go and create the opportunity, like life itself. And so, getting into the groove of where you're heading. Like as an example, yeah, big corporations, great. But let's say one day you want to be a founder. The Canadian technology landscape has improved so much in the last 10 years. There's so much great stuff going on. Find companies that are really hot, that are really mid-stage, that are growing super fast, and get in at an entry level so you can see this, this sort of like innovation in real time and understand the machinations, how it works, and start envisioning yourself as a founder and seeing the people who are really, really instrumental in that. And those could be your mentors. But anywhere you go, there will be amazing people, and it's your job to make them want to spend their time with you because it's valuable to them.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. Never, ever, ever be afraid to pick up the phone. I've got a good story. There's a gentleman named John Love, who's the president of KingSet Capital. John, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I picked up the phone to him and said, hey, I'd love to, ask you questions and come into the office. And for some really odd reason, he said yes. Fast forward 12 years, we bought a building from him. And he remembered the fact that I came in and just randomly asked to have a meeting and acted like I knew what I was talking about. And he said, I really enjoyed that and use you as an example because people don't pick up the phone enough. It's very hard to ignore somebody who's calling you asking something. It's very easy to ignore a LinkedIn message or an email. And I've always remembered that story and shared it. But, pick up the phone and ask. And we live in such an amazing society that you can Google literally everything. So, Google it. Google that question too. One of the things that will pop up is in a charity, a non-for-profit that I was part of a long time ago called 10,000 Coffees. And this non-for-profit's job is to do exactly what you're asking. It's got an amazing Rolodex of entrepreneurs and business leaders, and their job is to just connect for a 15-minute coffee. And these people volunteer their time. Anybody can join as a student and just say, hey, listen, this is what I'm looking for. These are a couple of entrepreneurs on your website that I'd love to connect with. And these entrepreneurs are doing 15 minutes, once a week right now. And I'm sure there's many other programs like that as well. And even ask your professors. A lot of great people are keeping in touch. I mean, there's only 3 phone calls to everyone in the world, we like to say, right?
And there's some really good points here about, mentorship is something that will require, your initiative to do that kind of outreach. And there are opportunities, networking events through your programs while you're still a student and leaping on those opportunities. And then I think a couple of panelists have talked about seeking out internships, early work opportunities, because I think probably the people that you work with will emerge as mentors in your life. Noora, we've got a specific question here for you. How do you accept or I guess adapt to uncertainty, especially in this moment when everything seems like it's going wrong? And how do you plan for that? And I guess this student's perspective is that as a university student, we plan everything, but there's so much uncertainty. How do you plan for uncertainty?
You just have to keep pushing. And I think, uncertainty will happen. We can, you can plan. And for me, God is the best of planners, and you just have to kind of push and have that faith. So sometimes we plan everything to the dot, and reminds me of that like Alanis Morissette song, Ironic. It's like you plan everything, but like, you never know what might happen, but that can't be the reason that you don't push forward and you don't still plan and you don't still push forward again. And there will be times where doors will shut in your face, but you're just going to have to find another door to open or try to find the key to the door that closed. I don't know. So uncertainty will happen. That should not be your reason to not pursue what is in your gut or is kind of driving that force within you.
Yeah, and I could maybe pop in here as well. In terms of uncertainty, I would say, and I think Richard said it probably more eloquently, but the idea of just, you won't have all of the information. You have to know how to make decisions without all the information in front of you. It's, the 70% good enough, and let's just get it out and we'll figure and test it out. That's the attitude that you have to take. You just have to jump. When you see that cliff, you have to know that the water's going to be there, and you hope for the best, as it were. But that's it. And it's really a confidence and a trust in yourself, and being able to recognize that even the worst case scenario, you'll be able to have your wits about you, and most importantly, I think we touched on this, is that having a community and a network of people, a family, a business, professionals who will be there to be that safety net when you need it.
I've got a couple questions I'm going to merge together that are kind of related to this theme, but they're questions about failure. So students are asking, have you ever got stuck? How do you navigate through that? And then another question about dealing with the anxiety related to taking those leaps and running a business, and how do you pick yourself up from failure?
Failure is going to happen, right? Like, you're going to fail at one point. It's never a straight, like, hockey stick path. And if it is, then wow. But failure is going to happen. So for me, as someone that's personally suffered with anxiety, it was making sure that I knew when I was overworking myself. It was knowing when to slow down. It was knowing when to step back. It was knowing when to ask for help, and it's okay to do so, and find kind of where that challenge was. And it was knowing, it was talking out loud about it, because entrepreneurship is super lonely sometimes, especially if you're starting on your own and you don't have a team and you're really trying to wear, those 400 hats. So it was talking openly about it. And something that Sharon mentioned is, join a hub or join a community that you could lean on someone, or you could learn from other people's experiences. I think we sometimes think like, oh, no, I got it. They're not going to teach me anything more than I already know. But it's not really about necessarily teaching you, but sometimes you just need that community to really be able to extend your hand or to lean back when you need to. Yeah.
I'll jump in. The first part, have you ever gotten stuck? Well, you're not stuck every single day. You're not challenging yourself, and you have so much more potential in you. So expect to be stuck every single day. And then we believe is in failure. Well, start fast and fail fast, quite simply. Don't sit around waiting for that. If you've got an idea, don't sit around and wait. Get going on it right away. And if you see it's not working, make sure you get out of it right away. And sometimes out of the best failures come the best opportunities as well.
Yeah, if I can share really quickly on that note, I had the exact same thing. One of my companies, I literally fell flat on my face. The client came out from underneath me. We're running out of money. I had to let go of a few people. All the worst things that could happen. I could see the thing kind of crumbling from underneath me. And it was a big failure at some point. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of that? And then I just had an opportunity that sort of slipped in, and it was completely out of left field. And I was just open to it. And my ears were open to it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this and see what happens. And it led me to a completely different direction, mind you. So I ended that company and moved on to something different. But it showed me a different path, and I was open to listening to it. So yeah, failure just leads to other opportunities that you can be open to. So I'd see it.
So I think the summary is that failure, it's all about your state of mind and what lens you look at things through. And so if you embrace and accept that you will experience failure, then it's a lot easier when that day comes and you're looking at, how do I flip the switch? How do I turn this into a success? And it's really, really important. And it also, don't get me wrong, it comes with tremendous anxiety and stress. And we see it all the time with our early stage founders who are like true superheroes that, really not because they haven't executed in many cases, or not because of anything other than things that, Richard and I experience with market timing or any other, when you take risks, there's going to be failure. And it's really about getting yourself back up, dusting yourself off, putting a good community around you who can support you in those moments, or a great peer group, people going through similar things who will tell you like, it's okay. You're going to turn it around. It's really this, you really have to be mindful and thoughtful about how you get ready for these things and embrace them and move forward.
So something I'd add there, there was a time in my first company, the dot-com crash hit. I mean, all of our clients started hiding under the bed instead of spending money. I didn't sleep well for a year, and I did not have one good night of sleep for a year easily. And I mean, ultimately what came out of that is the realization there's no one to blame. There's no point complaining. You can think the world is being unfair and you're being picked on and oh my God, it's so terrible. None of that does any good whatsoever. The only thing that does any good is realizing this is on me. This is my responsibility. I take responsibility for whether I succeed or fail. I own that. It's what I do that will make a difference. No point complaining, no point whimpering, just get out there and do something. Take it on and do something about it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to take away from that perspective about regrouping after a failure, evaluating what were the factors that led to that failure, and then planning on how to rebuild and what comes next. And I think of a business like a restaurant. Like I'm sure if you ask any restaurant owner about failure, they've probably owned one or two restaurants before the restaurant that they currently own, and have learned lessons from one closing. And sometimes the failures are not necessarily as a result of decisions that you made, right? Like market conditions can change. There can be a bubble that bursts. There can be a pandemic that hits that makes the hotel industry much different than it was a year ago. And maybe that's something to think about too, around failure, is that you'll be operating in an environment where you've only got a certain percentage of control over the outcomes. And there's a whole number of other factors that you don't necessarily control, some of which that can be, an updraft that really helps your business take off, and some of which can be a real downdraft that brings you down. You got to figure out how to catch that wind again. Oh boy, mixed metaphors. I've got so many great questions here. Thank you everybody for posting these. I'm going to pick at random here. Back on mentorship, has anybody been a mentor? And what are the kinds of things you like to see in an entrepreneurial mentee?
Yeah, let me start with something. I get an awful lot of emails. I'm sure everybody on the panel does. Can I just pick your brain for 10 minutes over something? And honestly, that doesn't sound like a pleasant experience. That sounds like going to the dentist and having someone pick at you. I don't want that. If someone's going to approach me, they should find some way to make it at least a little bit interesting or fun or challenging or something that, if I have to pick between which ones of these people I'm going to spend some time with, I can't do them all. I can't give 15 minutes to everyone who asks for it. There aren't that many 15 minutes. So I have to choose, and I'm going to choose in part on the basis of who do I think I could, provide some useful assistance to. But, like anyone, if it sounds super unfun, I'm probably not going to pick that one. So just as you're approaching potential mentors out there, make sure there's something in it for them too.
Also, I think, if you join a company with good culture, you're joining up with mentors. You're a good boss should be a mentor. I mean, I know in our organization, we have about 1,400 employees, and every one of our leaders that are in a hierarchy above one of those employees are expected to be a mentor, to cultivate these people, because the fastest way to grow talent is within an organization. And I think every organization has that attitude, especially these days with culture being top of mind of things. So there's a lot of mentors out there. Sometimes they're just not where you tend to be looking.
I found my first mentor to be my professor when I was finishing up my master's. She was the one that was almost my sounding board. And, I worked really closely with her finishing my thesis. And I felt like, I was able to really get that advice that I needed. Until today, I'm in touch with her, and I'm so grateful for, her friendship. And I look back and I'm like, if it wasn't for, things that she's told me, or the fact that she's kind of like, throw yourself out there, I may have not have done it. And so sometimes it's right under your nose and you don't realize it, right? It's sometimes the people in your network and you don't even realize it. You don't really have to reach super far. And then if you happen to bump into someone, later in my career, I found one of my first bosses at the UN. He was, are such an advocate and so incredible. Like Anil was saying, sometimes your own bosses, not all bosses are bad. Some of them are, but not all bosses are bad. And some of them want to see you succeed, want to see you grow, and use their experience, their growth, their guidance to be able to push you. I remember with my boss, when I told him, this is not challenging enough for me, he was like, what do you need to kind of grow? What do you need to kind of make this more challenging? And I think it's important to talk openly in that work culture, because if you don't talk about it with those around you, they're not going to know.
I think mentors come in all shapes and sizes and present themselves at different times, and you got to be on the lookout for them. And I think some of the messages you're hearing is don't be entitled. Don't assume that someone needs to spend that time with you or they owe you something. Make it compelling for them. Every story that you've heard just now, those mentors saw something in those individuals, and those individuals really presented themselves in a light that made it compelling for those mentors to want to engage. And so it's your job to make people want to engage with you, to want to mentor you. And, like Anil said earlier, he emailed, and by the way, I know John loved Anil. He's an amazing guy, and I had a similar experience. But John saw something in Anil. I can tell you that whatever Anil said to him was really compelling and really interesting. So just give that thought. Don't be entitled. Be super resourceful. Be super thoughtful, and make people want to work with you and guide you.
Yeah, and I would also add to that is I think you have to know also what you want. So before you kind of jump into a conversation, have a sense of what it is that you're looking for from a mentor. What are the areas that you want support in or question about, and so on. And do the research, as you said. It's as simple as sometimes going on LinkedIn and kind of following them, or wherever they live, whether it's on social media or if they've written books, or if they're your boss, or to know a little bit more about them, and really kind of do the research behind it and see, is there an alignment in the end? Because what might seem like one mentor to someone is not the mentor for you. So understand, where are those alignments from a value perspective, from an industry side, so that there is, a connection that makes good sense for both sides. That's when the win happens usually.
So I'm really grateful for all of the advice and stories that you've been able to share with students here today. I think this is really valuable for our students, and there's a lot to take away. And judging by the questions, there's so much that students want to know about this. So thank you to everybody who's been attending. I want to thank all the panelists as well, as we are getting close to time here. But we are still doing more in this series, talking with alumni about challenges that they've faced in their careers, how they've gotten to their careers. So please join us for the next Moving Forward session, which is going to be on February 4th at 2:00 Eastern. And it's going to be a panel of English alumni. So picking up on Sharon's thread here, my English degree, what a great decision. And that is February 4th, 2:00 Eastern. You can find the registration link in the chat just below now to sign up for that. And that brings us to the end of our time. So I want to thank everyone here. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Noora. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Sharon.